Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Thursday morning, the 31st of October, and happy Halloween to you all. Okay, we're going to talk about the Delphi case today and what happened at the end of day 11 of the trial, if you're not counting jury selection, that is. If you want to know what my views are about Dr. Monica Waller, who arguably gave the most damaging testimony yet for the defence. If you want to hear my views on her, she was the clinical psychologist that treated Richard Allen while he was in Westville for 13 months. I did a live stream yesterday evening my time, so you can go and check that out. But right at the end of that live stream, the news was just coming in that Brad Webber, the neighbour, whose property is right on the south side of Monan High Bridge, he testified. There's a little bit more information. All right, I want to talk about it. Take it away, Andy.
It's time for you guys to start being journalists.
Before an angry Andrew Baldwin left the courthouse, 13 News overheard him speaking to Richard Allen's wife, saying, "It ain't over. The world's watching. The world sees what's going on."
Yesterday, I recapped what the state don't have against Richard Allen. They don't have any witnesses that reported seeing someone like Richard Allen, no DNA from the crime scene or from his property that links him to the crime scene. And the unspent round, well, Melissa Oberg, the ballistics person, couldn't conclusively repeat cycling around through Rick's Sig Sauer P226 and could only get a match when she actually fired it, so not comparing like with like. And several other weapons, including that of Brad Webber, could not be excluded. Well, something I just clean forgot yesterday is the phone data conundrum. But it becomes very, very relevant to today's conversation. So I'm not going to read through this timeline as what was found on Libby's phone. This is the most important thing for today. The last recorded movement of the phone was 2:32 p.m. on February 13th, 2017. 2:32 p.m. Remember, the Bridge Guy video was 43 seconds long, and it was 2:13 p.m. into 2:14 p.m. So it would have been the end of that, so 2:14, when supposedly Bridge Guy said guys, and then the girls say hi, and then he says down the hill, and they're at the south side of the bridge. The private drive to Brad Webber's property goes under that south side of the bridge. If Brad Webber had walked by or driven by and they were there at the down the hill moment, yeah, arguably that could have scared the killer away. We've also got to remember that Libby's phone was found under Abby's body. Now, we've known that since last September. This is the crime scene. This is a diagram that Lawyer Lee did based on what was said in court. So this is the F tree, or the upside down L tree, whatever you want to call it. That, according to blood spatter expert Pat Cicero, is where Libby was first cut. And she held her hands to her throat, she staggered, she gripped the tree, and that's what caused the F, or the upside down L. She was able to stagger several feet to this location, here, where there was a large pool of blood, and Pat Cicero claims that she died there. She was then dragged between 10 and 20 feet, leaving no drag marks whatsoever. 5'4" Richard Allen was able to do this on his own without leaving any drag marks. Remember, Libby's also 5'4", but 200 pounds. She actually weighed more than Richard Allen. So he's a Mr. Strongman. But he dragged her to this location here, hereabouts, and this is where Abby was. So he dragged Libby to Abby, and they were found just a few feet away from each other. Abby was dressed, and he said that Abby had never moved. So somehow he'd managed to separate them, Libby here, Abby over here, and Abby had never moved. So Abby basically was killed in the place where she was found. Abby was wearing Libby's clothes, or some of them. Specifically, she was wearing Libby's jeans. So if Libby had tucked the phone into her back pocket, in putting Libby's jeans on Abby, the killer inadvertently moved that phone under Abby's body. So the phone must have fallen out of Libby's pocket, and that's why it's under Abby. Remember, the phone did not move after 2:32. So all of this had to be completed by 2:32. Remember that. Okay. In yesterday morning's video, I talked about the confessions that the guards testified to. The only detail that wasn't vague at all was, according to the testimony of the guards, was the box cutter. Richard Allen had said that he'd used a box cutter and he threw that into a CVS dumpster. And surprise, surprise, the medical examiner changed his story, because in the deposition with the defence in February of this year, he said that Libby's wounds were most likely caused by a weapon with a serrated edge. He's now saying could have been caused by a box cutter. Okay, all right. But the confession he told Dr. Monica Waller is the most damaging, because it's detailed, and arguably it contains details only the killer would know. And this comes from testimony by a clinical psychologist who, throughout the prosecution's questioning of her, was saying that Richard Allen was faking psychosis. Now, by all accounts, Brad Rosie, in defence cross-examination, was able to pull it back. And Dr. Waller admitted that, yes, he was mentally ill. But this confession, what Angela Ganotti from Fox News wrote on Twitter. Allen told Waller about what happened on February 13th, 2017. Visited his mother in Mexico, Indiana in the morning. Didn't go out to lunch with them. Then he decided to buy a 6-pack of beer, drank 3 of them before he went to the trail. He followed Abby and Libby across the bridge. He messed with the gun. I guess that's when the bullet fell out, when I ordered the girls down the hill. So it truly was a magic bullet, because it was able to get itself from the bridge, or the south side of the bridge near the hill, or wherever. It managed to get itself across the creek, up the other side, and then bed itself into the crime scene in between the 2 girls. So what Richard Allen said about that bullet, no, that didn't happen. This is the problem, though. Allen told her he saw a man or heard a van. Right? They couldn't tell in court. Now, the consensus seems to be a van. Like, I listened to defence diaries, to Lawyer Lee, and to Andrea Burkhart, and it seems, consensus-wise, it was a van. And that's what scared him, not to rape them. Instead, he forced them down the hill, across the creek, slashed their throats, and covered their body with tree branches, and then walked back to his car. So it's the van thing. This detail, down the hill, everybody knows. Everybody knows down the hill. Slashed their throats, and then covered their body with sticks. He made this confession on the 3rd of May. He'd already had his discovery by then, that had been sent to him by his defence team. He'd had that throughout April. So he'd been able to digest those details. The crime scene photos would have told him all of that. And the horror of seeing those crime scene photos and then being in and out of psychosis, well, there's the confession. But it's the van. That's a very, very specific detail. And then the bombshell hit the courtroom. Because immediately after this, Well, not quite immediately, because Steve Mullen came back to say there's only one Ford Focus black of Richard Allen's model registered in the whole of Carroll County, so no one else with a Ford Focus is allowed into Carroll County, or the surrounding counties. Not allowed. But the photo of supposedly Richard Allen's vehicle driving past the Hoosier Harvester camera at like 1:27, well, we've not seen that photo, but how clear is it? How easy is it to see what that model is? We've no idea because we haven't seen the photo. On a CCTV camera, can a very specific model be identified? Can similar models of Ford Focuses, could blue Ford Focuses or dark grey Ford Focuses look black on a CCTV camera? So I don't think very much of that. But the actual star witness was this guy, the white van man. This is Brad Weber. So this is what Wish TV said here. State Prosecutor Nick McClellan called Brad Weber to the stand. He's a Carroll County resident who lives off County Road 625 West, just outside of Delphi. Owns the property near the Morning High Bridge where the girls were killed. Remember, the bridge guy video ended in 2:14 and Libby's phone didn't move after 2:32 p.m. You've got to remember those two times. You've got to remember that 18 minutes. Okay. So Weber worked first shift at Subaru near Lafayette. Was at work on February 13th, the day of Libby and Abby's murders. Clocked in at 5:41, clocked out at 2:02. Then he drove home approximately 20 to 25 minutes. So he's looking at being home at 2:22 to 2:27. That's assuming that there was no traffic, assuming he didn't stop anywhere, all of that good stuff. All right, so let's say 2:27. All right. Defense attorney, however, really rattled Brad Weber. He asked him if he drove straight home, to which Weber said he dropped off a trailer. Baldwin said, though, that was earlier in the day, adding that Weber had originally told police he went to work on ATM machines after work. This prompted Weber to scream, "That's not correct," and to deny Baldwin's claim multiple times. So I want to play you what Andrea Burkhart said about this. Then I also want to play a woman called, I think, Oksana, who was on R&M Productions last night. She also witnessed this. So I want to give you these two opinions here. But Andrea first.
Drama of the day. Like if the whole like true crime psychologist wasn't enough drama, then we got Brad Weber on the stand. Now, I don't want to be rude. I really don't. But I also want to be descriptive, and I want to be able to characterize things in a way that people can get a clear image of what was happening and the effect of it. And so when Mr. Weber walked into the courtroom, the parenthetical note that I made was deliverance.
Deliverance.
Mr. Weber, he looked like he could have been in Deliverance. Like he literally looked like some of the main characters in Deliverance. Like, you know, in all the bad scenes that everybody knows about, he looks like that. And he behaves like that.
Oh, I can't.
He comes kind of slouching in and sits on the stand, and he's very uncomfortable. He spends most of the time with his chair turned so that his back is entirely to the jury, and he is working his mouth the whole time on the stand. I know a lot of the side stories about this case and some of the side theories and the possible other things that are involved and so on and so forth. And I don't really take any position on any of that because I'm focusing on what's happening in the courtroom and what's, you know, the evidence that comes out in the courtroom. But I just have to tell you, I've seen meth mouth an awful lot. Seen me an awful lot of meth mouth. Sure is what it looked like to me. So Mr. Weber was a character, like right from the moment that he got on the stand. We knew already he lives at the end of the private drive that goes under the Monon High Bridge Trail. In February 2017, he worked at Subaru, and his shift would run from 6 to 2:30. He provided the address of where Subaru is. The state introduced his timesheet for February 13th of 2017, and that showed that he clocked in at 5:41 that day and clocked out at 2:02 p.m. He then testified that he went home and that the drive home takes about 20 to 25 minutes. And the state then introduced Exhibit 311, which is a photo of a white Ford Econovan. And he identified it as his. He had it in February 13th of 2017, and that's what he drove to work and home. This is the state's last hope, the white van. The white van is the distinctive detail that...
Who'd have known that a white van man would be the most persuasive evidence against Richard Allen? Who'd have thought?
Mr. Allen provided in his confession to Ms. Walla, to Dr. Walla, that we haven't heard about before at trial, and that it's something that I don't think is publicly known. You know, I don't think that was really publicly known as part of the investigation. Certainly not at that time. I mean, a lot of things have become publicly known since the cases has become public, and so much of the material.
Yeah, but wouldn't it have been in the discovery? When did the defence learn about this detail? If this has only just become known to the defence, then yeah, that's an issue. That's a problem. But if that was in the discovery that was given to Rick in April of 2023, then there's where he's got the detail from.
Material has come out through the pleadings and the hearings and stuff like that. Now, of course, it could have still been in the discovery. We can't rule that out. But the state is going to try to use this as their corroboration of this is the story. This is the missing piece. Rick Allen said, you know, when Mr. McClelland gave his opening statement and described the crime, he used what Mr. Allen said in this confession, that he wanted to have his way with the girls, but something happened that interrupted him. He got scared, and so he just killed them instead. Put the branches on them to try to hide them, and then he left and went home, and you never heard anything about him again until 5 years later.
All right, again, I want you to keep the times in mind. I want you to keep the times in mind. All right, so we've got 2:14 down the hill. We've got 2:27, 2:25, 2:27. Brad Weber driving home, driving by. That disturbed Richard Allen, so decided not to rape them, but instead take them across the creek, kill them, and leave them there. And remember, Libby's phone didn't move after 2:32. Those are the times you got to keep in your head.
So, you know, I heard that confession, and my first, like I said, my first reaction when we get through the direct examination with the state is, wow, this could be pretty damaging. Like, this doesn't sound good. This sounds very detailed. That sounds like something that can be verified. You know.
Yeah.
Maybe he did.
Yeah.
Maybe he did.
Bad.
Then we got the major impeachment of Dr. Walla, and the fact that he had, already had his discovery when he's making the statements, and she's talking to him about what everybody's talking about on the podcast and stuff. Like, okay, maybe it's not so strong, but still, like, I'm more skeptical than the average person. I accept that,
Look, I've heard stuff about Brad Weber. So if Waller's hanging around in the Facebook groups, Brad Weber's been discussed since the year dot. We knew Brad Weber's weapon had been seized. We knew he was considered early on. We knew this. Did Waller know this?
I definitely accept that. I'm happy to entertain alternative theories of things. There's no guarantee that the jury is, that the jurors are going to share that kind of mindset. So I'm like, this is really not looking great. Really not looking great.
Yeah, it's the worst day for the defense. It is. It's the worst day, but it gets hilarious at the end.
For Mr. Allen with this particular confession. And so this Ford, this is going to be a key, because that's what sets their timeline. If he leaves work at 2:02 and it takes him 20 to 25 minutes to get home, puts him on the driveway right after the 2:13 bridge guy video, and it fits. They can make it fit their theory that
they can make it fit, but he's not going to be home straight after bridge guy video, though. Closer, I would say, to 2:30, given what the map says, and that's assuming didn't stop anywhere.
It was one guy, and this was the time frame, and this is how it happened, and all of that. So it's the missing piece that ties it all together. Mr. Baldwin did the cross-examination. The first question is, you were out of town the week before February 13th. Mr. McClelland instantly objects to it being beyond the scope. Mr. Baldwin says it's relevant. It's going to be relevant to the issues that came out. And she's like, how? And he says, well, my question will reveal that if you would like to, have a sidebar. So they have a sidebar. And this is a pretty extended sidebar. Pretty extended sidebar.
A long sidebar. But look at what Truth Seeker said here. Day one, the cop on stand said Brad Weber got home at 3:30. So is it 2:30 or 3:30? Was the cop mistaken? Wonder if the jury are putting all this together. Anyway, after the sidebar, they come back.
So when they come back, it's clear he's not going to get to follow this up. So he says, you did not drive straight home on February the 13th, did you? And Brad Weber says, that's not correct. And Mr. Baldwin says, you told law enforcement just a few days after the crime on February the 18th that you went to work on ATM machines. And Brad Weber now is, he says, it's not true. And he's angry, infuriated. It's like an instant rage. Take back. Uh-oh. Deliverance moment. Ooh.
No.
That's not true. And he says, I dropped off a trailer. He says, I dropped off a trailer. And Mr. Baldwin says...
So, presumably, he's saying he dropped off a trailer at his house at 2:30?
You did that earlier in the day. And then Mr. Baldwin walks up to the stand and hands him a piece of paper. And he's handed him a subpoena. Right there on the stand. Boss move. Boss move. That beyond the scope, they're going to be coming back to it. They're going to be coming back to what Brad Weber was doing out of town the week before February 13th.
That is intriguing. Anyway, as if that wasn't funny enough, this is R&M Productions, and this is someone called Oksana.
Do you know that in like 2 years ago, he held 2 women at gunpoint on his property because they yeah.
No.
He's been known to do that, like when people...
I've heard that. I can't corroborate it, but apparently.
He'll like basically take them hostage. It's not funny, but he's very scary.
What?
He's very scary.
Wow. He was, it was right across from the murder scene.
Yep.
But supposedly somehow, and again, okay, I might be biased, right? Maybe. But Rick sees a van, somebody coming home. So instead of raping them, he decides to
go across the creek.
Kill them. Go across the creek in front of his house, basically, right?
Right, and you could see the crime scene from the Weber house.
Right. So that was better. That was better.
You think that...
It doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't make sense. And it makes even less sense when you consider the times. So I hope you've still got those times in your head.
I just think I don't know. There's something very suspicious about him getting so rattled.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what did they hand him? Because I know Criminal Network was in here saying that they handed him a subpoena to come back.
Could be. Maybe. I thought it was because Andy was talking about, oh, maybe.
So there's his subpoena. But she said the jury were like, what? What the F? What the F is this? So I'm not sure that Nick's bombshell moment was actually more of a sparkler. You know, you get on fireworks night, you get on Guy Fawkes night. More of a sparkler than a bombshell. But still, I would consider this potentially damaging for the defence. But remember those times. So Brad Weber gets home, 2:27, disturbs whatever Rick Allen is doing. So in just 5 minutes, 2 minutes, if it arrives at a couple of minutes later at 2:30, so potentially only 2 minutes, he takes the girls down the hill, across the creek. Now, maybe they're already naked, because he's had from 2:14 to 2:30 to undress them. So he gets disturbed. Brad Weber drives by. The girls don't try to scream or run or anything. No, all right. So he gets scared. Instead of just running away, he takes them across the creek, up the other side, and murders them both in 2 minutes. Like, give him 5 minutes. Because the phone, testified by the state's own expert, the phone doesn't move after 2:32. Abby has got to be dead or dying, already dressed in Libby's clothes at 2:32, or else that phone would still be moving. What do you think to that? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.